Welcome to the Gastro Girl podcast. We bring together patients, experts, and health advocates who are all here to help you optimize your health. Here's your host, Jacqueline Gaulin.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining me on this episode of the Gastro Girl podcast. I am so excited today because I have someone so amazing, so world-renowned, and TikTok famous, and he's a gastroenterologist and advanced endoscopist at a teaching institution in Philadelphia, and he's also the Chief Medical Officer of Medtronic. Welcome, Dr. Austin Chang. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time coming.
I know it's been a long time coming, and as we were saying when we started, I remember there was a picture of you and I and another of your colleagues sitting on the floor at one of the ACG's conferences, trying to, outdo each other on Twitter for the most retweets and stuff. And now you far exceeded anything I could ever do, including having a brand new book called Gut and Owner's Guide. I tried to get it and it sold out. I mean, how much more impressive can that get? But anyway, super proud of you and excited. And I really want to talk about this book because I want to help you get into as many hands as possible because it's such a great guide for someone to understand, not only just about the whole gut, what the gut is. There's some confusion out there, right? What is the gut? What is the digestive system? And you also make this really interesting point about gastroenterology. And is that really enough? Is that really talking about what we're talking about? So I'll let you, answer that. So what is the gut? Let's start there.
Yeah, I think that it's a common misconception. It's something really that a lot of us gastroenterologists have to explain to patients and our friends and family all the time, that it's not just the tube that is our intestines, but really there's so many other organs involved, right? Even along that whole tract, there's still the stomach and the esophagus and the colon, and then on top of that, there's the liver and the pancreas, and there's just so much involved. And there's also kind of areas of study that are invisible, I guess, or in the sense that it's not an organ, but so much of gastroenterology has also become about the microbiome and about obesity, and so there's just so much variety to it, and that's what makes GI so interesting and what attracted me to the field in the first place, and why there's also so much opportunity for innovation across the whole gamut of organs and systems that we deal with. So yeah, that's really what the gut is all about. And I think, if you go to any conference, GI conference, there's just so much happening because we've become so subspecialized that, one GI doctor could be completely different from another GI doctor, and our expertise has just become so subspecialized these days.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like you do some really important work in gastroenterology and advanced endoscopy, and with all the advances in endoscopy and bariatrics, like, can you explain what you do? Because I think that's so interesting.
Yeah. So just to give everyone a little bit of context, after my gastroenterology training, I also underwent additional training to be an advanced endoscopist. And most of those procedures are basically more complex procedures. A lot of those procedures are related to the pancreas and the bile duct. So some of the things that we deal with are like stones, like gallstones in the bile duct that we have to remove, or cancers or complications of pancreatic cancer. We help diagnose pancreatic cancers by taking biopsies of the tumor. If the cancer is blocking off certain structures, we have to deal with that. And then on top of that, I also do bariatric endoscopy, which I underwent additional training for. And that involves novel procedures to help people lose weight, either people who've never undergone surgery or people who have previously undergone bariatric surgery. And there's so many different cool procedures that we can do to help people do that. And a lot of new devices that help us do those procedures, like endoscopic suturing devices. So these are things that I think a lot of people don't know that we can do. And that's why I'm trying to bring about more awareness through the book and on social media of all the different things that we do within GI.
And, and that's why I wanted to call you out your role, because I think you have such a great background for writing this book, because you take a different approach And I think that's really what I want to highlight today, and encourage people to check it out. So let's go through a little bit of what are some of the highlights of the book and what can a reader expect from the book? Like what are some of your favorite parts or things of note?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the favorite parts of the book of mine are, first of all, I've posted on social media that I love the introduction and the epilogue because I think it gives a lot of context into how to interpret medicine in general, all the biases that there are, like um, within medicine, and all the research that that informs how we practice medicine today is inherently biased. And so we have to keep that in mind. And we also have to understand that it's very dynamic, that things constantly change, and our understanding of GI and health today could be very different in 10 years based on the evidence that we generate through research. But also, some of the favorite things I have with the book are the fact that it's in color and it's illustrated. That's a big differentiator, I think, just to start. But after every chapter, there's also a myth busting section. And there's a lot of just frequently asked questions that I've encountered through social media and the internet that are just all in one place now, where you can just quickly reference and get quick answers to. There's an entire chapter on poop, which I think is kind of fun. And just even writing this book has reminded me of how nuanced our field is, and how the practice is just can be very you can just interpret it in so many different ways. And then I think two other sections I want to highlight. One is the history of GI innovation, like just looking through all the different discoveries over the years and kind of what has brought us to where we are today in terms of technology. And the final chapter is basically all about procedures and technology and your experience as a patient, in the hospital. So, many times people don't know what to expect when they go see the doctor. Like, why is it that the doctor is, asking you all these questions or doing these exam maneuvers? And when they suggest that you need a procedure, like, what do those procedures mean? And I feel like a lot of the gut health books out there on the market don't really talk about that because there's so many procedures and technologies I think that just don't get enough airtime. And so I wanted to bring more attention to that.
No, I love that. And patients were scared of those procedures because we don't understand what is going to happen before, during, after. And now we're hearing all about, I know this is near and dear to your heart, is artificial intelligence or AI's role. And I think that's so fascinating. But I'm really happy to hear that you have that in the book because there's so many advances that have happened. And with your advanced training, you know all about them. But patients, we may not know. And we just, may have a friend or a grandmother or someone that went through it years ago. And it's probably so different now, that it's good to have up-to-date information that's evidence-based so that patients can have full information that they can really have a shared decision-making process with their provider. The other thing that I thought was fascinating, and I can't wait to delve into this when I get my copy, is the social determinants of health. And we hear this a lot, and it's not just a performative question here. I'm sincerely grateful that you address that because there are factors, whether you're living in poverty or you lost a job or you don't have access to fresh, healthy food, can really make a difference, or healthcare, on what happens in your overall health as well as your gut health. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think that, when I think about what plays into why we develop disease or why we, have the conditions that we have, a lot of it can be attributed to gut health and or worsened by, those social determinants. Like I think when I think about if you have a certain GI condition and, if you're deterred from going to seek help because you can't afford parking, or you can't take time off work, or you can't get childcare, like these are things that are very real problems that we face, right? And um and and that all plays into like what our health is like. And yeah, I think that it was important to touch on that because we're so quick to blame ourselves or blame other, if you look at someone else and if they have a certain condition, we're also quick to blame them for their health condition. And really it's a lot of, societal factors, social determinants that are, at play here. And so we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves at the end of the day.
Yeah, and along those lines, like if a patient is reading your book, and you've mentioned some of the social determinants, such as like simple things like not being able to pay for parking or having childcare, or even access to the right care or health insurance. What can patients do? Like, what is your advice for them who may read this book and say, "Oh my God, I identify with this so well, but I know that, and what can I do, and how can I better my health?"
I think that's a tough
I
question because
know.
everyone's in a bit of a different situation. I would say that just understand that you're not alone, that other people are likely facing, a similar situation or have gone through a similar situation. And I think the beauty of living in the world today is that it's so interconnected, right? Like we have the internet and there's support groups and there's likely someone else who's talking about it online who is willing to help. There might be, organized groups that are there that could help locally or on a national level, obviously patient advocacy groups as well. So I think it's I would suggest finding those people who share the same kind of experience and can give you advice from there, because it shouldn't be something that you're going at alone. And also just being transparent with your physicians and other health professionals that you interact with, that like these are things that you are struggling with and that are getting in the way. And I think that it's good to express that, because sometimes, physicians are busy and they forget that there are things that are getting in the way. And good health professionals will try to think of solutions to help you through that. I mean, a lot of it is out of our control, and that is kind of the frustrating piece of healthcare these days, is that, insurance denials and like things like that. There's only so much we can do as clinicians to help out with that. But there are also some things that maybe we have resources to help out with. So being open and honest about it, no judgment from our part. We'd rather, have a honest conversation. Like you said, like this is a shared decision-making process. It should be at least. And so sometimes there's a way that we can kind of find a compromise to make sure that we can at least, try our best to help someone out.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the embarrassment and judgment, because one of the things, I don't know if this is considered a social determinant of health, but it's our own inherent fears of embarrassment, of afraid that we're going to be judged, that could prevent us from really being open to get the right diagnosis, or even to go to get care at all. Expand on that, Austin and Dr. Chang, because I think it's so important. We hear this over and over again in our conversations with patients, that they're often afraid, or they don't identify with someone who's typically has a disease like IBD, for instance. They don't see themselves represented, and that really is a barrier.
Yeah, I mean, especially in our field, I think people are nervous to talk about guts and butts, and or even like say the word anus out loud, right? Like, and I think at the end of the day, we're almost perpetuating a problem ourselves if we are afraid to talk about this, as clinicians, as patients. Like the more we talk about it, the more awareness there is. And that's not just, it can go far beyond that, because awareness can then lead to funding for research and things that we are in serious need of. And I think that that's why it's important to speak up about it. And fortunately, I feel like, again, with social media and the internet these days, there is, a greater degree of comfort around talking about these things openly. But, that's part of the reason why people are suffering, is because we're not getting enough funding to do the research that we need to help support these areas that we want to, that we care about. So I think we just got to keep talking about it openly. And fortunately, yeah, a lot of, especially like high profile people are coming forward and talking about their own stories and feeling comfortable talking about it. I always love when a celebrity, decides to talk about themselves getting a colonoscopy. And, over the years with like Katie Couric and Ryan Reynolds and, so forth, it's opened up the conversation a lot more.
Well, I know I love your stuff on social media, because you call it out and you show the pictures of these celebrities. Are like, oh my God, if Ryan Reynolds is getting a colonoscopy, how bad can it be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
If Ryan
seriously,
Hall can get one done, you can too.
yes, exactly. And you do such a great job with that. And I encourage everyone to really, I'm sure they're following you. You have like almost 1 million followers, if not 1 million followers on all your channels or over. I mean, you've gotten awards. You've been recognized by the White House. I mean, you've really made great strides in, walking the talk and really, explaining and breaking down the barriers. You put yourself out there. Sometimes you look goofy, right? But you do it and it's okay. It's like you make it comfortable for us as patients and consumers of health that, it's okay. And now talking about the
I,
internet, I want to talk about another area in your book that you talk about is the misinformation. So it's pros and cons. Like there's great that we have this access, but then it comes with like a warning label, right? But what is your advice for patients to, how to navigate this like immense landscape of
yeah.
information and products and all this stuff that just comes at us all the time?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you bring this up because that's the entire motivation behind why I'm on social media in the first place. Why I got into this over a decade ago was because of people who I was encountering in the hospital who were coming into the hospital because they were hearing all sorts of things that were wrong through the news or the internet. And so I thought, well, there's got to be more of us who are trained in this area to be out there talking about these things, right? So, so yeah, I think that, it's important to follow credentialed professionals, first of all. And I think that it's good to approach everything with a little bit of a healthy dose of skepticism, and to look up primary sources. And nowadays I've been over the years like advising some of the social platforms themselves in how to develop tools to help guide the viewers a little bit without, like censoring the content. So YouTube, for instance, has a tool where the creators themselves can apply to get their credentials verified through a third party. And then if they do, there's a label under, on the when you're watching the video, it'll actually show that this is somebody who's like a licensed health professional. And so those are some of the tools that you need to look out for, before you trust kind of who you're listening to on the internet. And I'll say as a creator myself that it's a lot. I've learned over the years that it's not all about just throwing data out there and facts at people. It's also how to message it in a fun way. And for me, it's been the juggling act of like, okay, I've, focused on the making sure that I have a solid clinical foundation and that I'm credible and that I know all the key opinion leaders. And that's kind of given me the flexibility to do fun things and be goofy
Yeah.
without losing my credibility, which is, it's a tough line to toe.
But you do it really well. I mean, you really do. You really
Oh,
do.
thank
No,
you.
you
I
do.
try.
No, that's great.
But yeah, so I do think like, and the thing is like a lot of us who are active on social media, um, are approachable. We put ourselves out there because we like to, interact with people who are um, engaging with us. And so we always are open to a conversation.
No, that's great. And speaking of the misinformation, the other thing that I'm so passionate and interested in is the amount of tests that claim to figure out what's wrong with your gut, and then they sell you like bunches of products. Give us some insight on this because we're all confused. Where's the
I mean,
science? Help us
yeah,
out.
I mean, just like a lot of I feel like the problem with a lot of those tests is that, the information that it spits out, we don't necessarily know what to do with as clinicians, quite honestly. Some of it is not, there's not enough evidence to kind of support what to do with those results. Um, and if the test is labeling you as healthy versus not healthy, like sometimes it's not as black and white as that. So, I would definitely like ask your own personal doctor whether or not like there's any validity to those tests that you're getting. But, oftentimes like they're not as regulated. They're not as helpful. They're not providing, so much helpful information for us. Maybe one day, but like I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, and that's what we've been hearing, and I like to ask because It is so, there are so many of these things out there, and it's very confusing. But before we go, and I could talk to you all day, but I know you've got videos to make and people to educate and probably books to sign. But you addressed this, and you mentioned like how gut health is relevant to all of us. Talk a little bit about that and what we should know.
Yeah, I think unlike some other fields, I think we've all experienced some, in one way or another, what it's like to not have a functioning gut. Whether if anyone's had an episode of nausea or has vomited or has had a bout of diarrhea, like that your gut can really wreak havoc. And even beyond that, like there's so many other things that that could happen to our gut that you might not even be aware of yet. But that said, we all have, like I said, the gut spans so many different organs and so many issues that we're likely to encounter. I mean, we all encounter gut health problems, so it's applicable to all of us. And so we should all care. Plus, right, like certain types of cancers that we screen for, like colorectal cancer, we're all supposed to, be screened for it at one point or another. For most people, that's age 45 if you're average risk. And so it's good to be aware of that, ahead of time.
Oh, wow. This is interesting. So it's so great. You're great. Now, give us, your final thoughts on who would benefit from reading this book and why we should read your book.
Yeah. I think everyone would benefit from reading this book because, like I said, everybody has a gut. And honestly, it's written for, the average adult, the understanding, the kind of language it's written in is actually taking kind of like my social media voice. It's meant to be a little more conversational, but it's also a reference book in some ways. And it's just colorful. I mean, I've been told multiple times.
I love I can't wait to get it. I love the illustrations.
That even middle schoolers like flipping through it and can understand what I'm talking about here. And like I said, it's kind of fun. The sections after every chapter, especially where we're busting certain gut health myths, I think is really helpful because there's just these questions we keep getting asked over and over, and they just appear on in multiple comment sections like on social media all the time. So it's just helpful to. You likely have had these types of questions before, and I try to answer all the ones that I could think of.
No, this is great. And where can we get the book? I know on Amazon and all the other book platforms.
On Barnes & Noble, there's an audiobook as well, which you can listen to on Spotify, Audible, Apple, wherever you listen to audiobooks.
Oh my God.
Narrated by myself.
That's awesome. So you didn't even have a voiceover actor. You did it yourself. That's great.
Yeah, which was fun. I insisted on doing that because I thought it would be, a cool experience, first of all. But also, I think it's just a personal touch. And for people who may have, visual, disabilities and whatnot, I think it's a good option,
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Chang, for being on our show today. I hope to have you on again. And listeners, if you have any questions on this episode, put them in the comments section, and maybe Dr. Chang, who knows, it might be a TikTok video. You never know. And follow him on all the channels, and you'll learn a lot and have some good laughs too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you for listening to the Gastro Girl podcast. For more information and resources, please visit gastrogirl.com. Do you have a question for Gastro Girl? Please email podcast@gastrogirl.com. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in the Gastro Girl podcast are not a substitute for medical advice from your healthcare professional. Please consult a licensed clinician in your state regarding all matters related to your health.